Good day, legends. Strap yourselves in because what we're about to break down is gonna blow your minds. The Labour government, yes, the same mob that parades around talking about economic responsibility, has been quietly lining its pockets with money from the mining industry while simultaneously driving a knife straight into its back. It's the kind of hypocrisy that makes your blood boil, and we're gonna expose every bit of it. Now, as you know, Treasurer Jim Chalmers, when he's not running around impersonating members of the SES or pretending he's not already in full campaign mode, is gearing up to deliver a budget that's supposed to save this government from electoral annihilation. But let's be real, this isn't about responsible economic management. It's about spin, cooked books, and making sure Labour stays in power. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has already made a strategic move, delaying the election to March 25th. That gives them time to pull off their biggest trick yet, making Australians believe they've miraculously fixed the economy while quietly picking their pockets to fund the whole charade. And don't worry, we'll be there on budget night with a massive 90-minute special to cut through the rubbish and tell you what's really going on. Now, let's talk about this so-called budget surplus, because, mate, it's the biggest scam of them all. 3 years in a row, they've patted themselves on the back for delivering a surplus, but how have they done it? By jacking up taxes on booze, petrol, and ciggies. By raiding the future fund. By squeezing every last dollar out of the mining industry while making sure that industry doesn't have a future. And that's where the real betrayal lies. The same industry that props up Australia's economy, the one that pays for our schools, hospitals, and infrastructure, is being demonized by a government that wouldn't last 5 minutes without its tax revenue. It's like borrowing money from your best mate while plotting to get him fired from his job. But Labour doesn't care. They are all in on this renewables fantasy, throwing billions into green energy projects while pretending that we can just flick a switch and live in some utopian, coal-free world overnight. Here's the reality: Australia needs mining. The world needs our resources. And if Labour keeps treating the sector like a punching bag, guess what? Those companies will take their money, and their jobs, elsewhere. Now, if you think that's bad, wait till you hear how they are handling debt. Albanese and Chalmers love to say they've repaired the budget, but the numbers tell a different story. They've spent $60 billion more than they claim to have saved, and they are quietly hiding $87 billion in off-budget spending. That's money they don't want you to see because if it was included, their whole economic fairytale would come crashing down. And what's their excuse? Blame the Liberals. Apparently, every cent of debt is someone else's fault. But don't forget, these are the same people who wanted to spend billions to buy an airline. The same people who told us JobKeeper didn't go far enough, even though it saved thousands of businesses from collapse. Now, let's talk about what Aussies actually want. Every poll shows the same thing: people are struggling with the cost of living. They are getting smashed by power bills, mortgage repayments, and grocery prices, and they want the government to step in. A whopping 88% of Australians believe the government should be spending more money to help them out. But here's the problem: where's that money gonna come from? Labour's already ransacked every revenue source they can get their hands on. The only way they can afford to hand out more cash is by borrowing even more or raising taxes again. And let's be real. Do you reckon this lot will ever cut spending? Not a chance. This is a government that gave itself a massive pay rise while the rest of the country was in a household recession. Politicians, public servants, they all got the biggest salary bump in a decade. Meanwhile, everyday Aussies are barely keeping their heads above water. And don't forget that infamous $275 energy bill saving that Labour promised before the election. Where is it? Nowhere. Instead, they came up with a sneaky little scheme where they pay power companies $25 a month to keep prices down artificially. But here's the kicker: that money is coming from your tax dollars. So technically, you're paying yourself, but Labour wants credit for it. And all of this, the economic mismanagement, the sneaky taxes, the mining betrayal, leads to one thing: a desperate government that knows it's on the ropes and is willing to do whatever it takes to buy its way back into power. So, what's next? If the polls are anything to go by, Labour is gearing up to spend even more in the lead-up to the election. They know Australians are hurting, so they'll throw money around like confetti, hoping no one stops to ask where it's coming from. And if they win another term? You can bet your last dollar that taxes will skyrocket, debt will explode, and the mining industry, one of the biggest pillars of our economy, will be left for dead. Make no mistake, this mob is as reckless as Daniel Andrews in Victoria and as clueless as Anastasia Palaszczuk was in Queensland. They are making the same mistakes, digging the same financial holes, and expecting you to just cop it on the chin. But here's the good news. Aussies aren't idiots. We've seen this play before. We know what happens when governments spend like there's no tomorrow, when they punish industries that keep the economy afloat, and when they promise the world but deliver nothing but debt. So, the question is, will Australians fall for it again? You tell us. Hit the comments, share this video, and make sure you're here on Budget Night because we are gonna tear apart every dodgy number, every sneaky trick, and every lie they try to sell you. This is the fight for Australia's future, and we are not backing down. Catch YA next time.